If you've ever felt out of place in a conversation, if you've ever looked around and wondered why people try so hard to fit in, if you've ever felt that social interactions are a pointless game you don't want to play, then this video is for you. And if you haven't felt this way, maybe it's time to question whether you've been living a lie. Because today, we're going to talk about an uncomfortable truth. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism, saw this with brutal clarity. Most people live trapped in a farce. They dress, behave, and speak as they think they should, not because it's their true nature, but because they've been programmed to seek acceptance. But here comes the question no one asks. Acceptance from whom? Think about this. How many times have you endured pointless conversations just to avoid looking rude? How many times have you laughed at a joke that didn't amuse you? How many times have you felt that every social interaction is a transaction where you're expected to give a part of yourself in exchange for belonging? And now the question that truly matters: at what cost? Schopenhauer made it clear. Intelligence and social life are in conflict. The smarter you are, the less sense you see in the farce. Not because you're arrogant, but because you see what others don't see. You see the masks. You see the lies disguised as courtesy. You see the fragility of a world where everyone seeks validation in the eyes of others. And the most terrifying thing you see, the thing most people prefer to ignore, is this: society is designed to keep you entertained, not to make you think. Because when you think too much, you start to notice the incoherence. You begin to realize that most relationships are superficial, that most conversations are noise, and that the effort to fit in is actually a form of self-sabotage. And here lies the dilemma. If you're smart enough to notice this, then you're also smart enough to feel the loneliness it brings. Because let's face it, the more you think, the less you fit in. And people feel it. They feel you don't join in the collective hysteria. They feel you don't participate in social rituals with the same blind devotion. And that bothers them, because your mere existence is a threat to the bubble they live in. Schopenhauer put it bluntly: solitude is the fate of all great minds. And that hurts. It hurts because society has taught you that happiness lies in connecting with others, that you need friends, social circles, belonging. But what happens when most of those connections are empty? What happens when you realize the price of socializing is mediocrity? What happens is that you start to look for something more. You start to withdraw. You begin to value your time more than other people's approval. And here's where something curious happens. At first, loneliness feels like a punishment. But then it becomes a privilege. Because in loneliness, you discover something society tries to hide from you at all costs: peace of mind. Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. For him, intelligence wasn't just a blessing, it was also a curse. The more you understand the world, the less it excites you. The more you see human nature, the less you want to be part of its game. And here is where many go wrong, because they'll think this message is an invitation to misanthropy, that it's about hating people or rejecting all social contact. But it's not. It's about understanding the difference between interaction and obligation. It's about giving yourself permission to choose when and with whom to socialize, rather than just going along with what's expected of you. It's about accepting that true intelligence doesn't need external validation. But here comes the most interesting part. When you stop seeking acceptance, something changes within you. People notice. They see you're not desperate to fit in, that you don't depend on their approval, that your world doesn't crumble if you're not invited to the next party. And that confuses them, because most people live trapped in the need to be seen, heard, approved. And you, by not participating in that game, become an enigma that intimidates, an enigma that intrigues. Because the irony of it all is that the less you care about social validation, the more power you have over it. True freedom begins when you no longer worry about what others think of you. So the next time someone tells you that you should socialize more, that you should try harder to be more sociable, that you should be like everyone else, remember this: it's not you who's wrong. You're simply someone who's seen the truth. And the truth, for most people, is too uncomfortable to accept. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because when you realize you don't need social validation, when you truly internalize that most interactions are theater, you start to notice something else: the silence. Silence becomes your ally, and that terrifies others, because we live in a world where noise is constant. Social media, trivial conversations, news designed to provoke reactions. Everything is made to keep you in a state of perpetual distraction. Because silence forces you to think, and thinking is dangerous. Schopenhauer not only understood this, he lived it. He spent most of his life away from society, immersed in philosophy, music, and contemplation. And it wasn't because he hated people. It was because he understood that the noise of the world only serves to cloud the mind. And here is where most people go wrong, because they confuse solitude with isolation. But there's a huge difference between being alone and being isolated. Being alone is an act of power. It's consciously deciding that you prefer depth over superficiality, that you choose quality over quantity. Being isolated, on the other hand, is a curse. It's what someone feels who wants to fit in but can't, who strives to be accepted but never achieves it. And here's the irony: the one who desperately seeks acceptance will always be rejected. But the one who rejects it by choice will never truly be alone. Because when you walk your own path, not caring about others' approval, you attract those who truly matter. People who think, people who question, people who don't need to fill every second of their lives with unnecessary noise. Because here's the truth: intelligence is not antisocial. What happens is that intelligence rejects the banal. Think about this. The great geniuses of history weren't antisocial, but they weren't willing to waste their time on empty conversations either. Da Vinci spent years immersed in his work without feeling the need to share every thought with the world. Nietzsche withdrew from society when he realized that his way of thinking was too uncomfortable for conventional minds. Tesla worked on his inventions with an obsession that few understood. And all of them were seen as eccentric, as strange, as difficult people to deal with. Why? Because they didn't conform to the norm. They didn't follow the script of ordinary social life. Because here's the secret: social life is just a series of predictable routines designed to keep you within the system. From the moment you're born, you're taught that being accepted is the most important thing, that you need friends, that you need to be part of a group, that isolation is bad. But no one tells you that most of those groups only exist because of the fear of loneliness, not because of real affinity. No one tells you that many people with large social circles actually feel empty. No one tells you that the best ideas, the great revolutions, the most important discoveries were born in minds that dared to step away from the noise. But there's more. Because here's where many get confused. They think the solution is to completely reject society, that the answer is to become a hermit, disconnect from the world, and live in total isolation. But it's not. Because true power isn't in running away from the world. It's in knowing when to interact with it and when not to. True power is moving in the shadows when the noise is too loud, but appearing with strength when needed. Think of the great strategists. They weren't always in the center of the battle, but when they appeared, their impact was impossible to ignore. Those who truly understand life are neither slaves to society nor fugitives from it. They're silent players. They move their pieces without announcing it. They build in the dark. And when the world finally realizes their existence, it's too late because they've already won, without needing to call attention to themselves. Schopenhauer said that superior intelligence is destined for solitude, but not as a punishment, rather as an advantage. Because in solitude, you can truly build something worthwhile. But what about those who don't understand this? What happens to those who think happiness only comes from the approval of others? What happens is that they live trapped in a cycle of dependence. Every photo they upload, every story they share, every opinion they express, it's all calculated to receive a reaction, a like, a comment, a validation that makes them feel like they exist. But here's the brutal truth. If your existence depends on the reaction of others, then you've never really lived. You're just a reflection of what others expect of you. And that's the opposite of being free. Because true freedom isn't about doing whatever you want without consequences. It's about not needing anyone's approval to do what you truly desire. It's about not depending on noise to feel alive. It's being able to be alone in complete silence without feeling anxiety or the need to fill every void with distractions. And if you can't do that, then you're not free. You're a prisoner of noise. Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone, which is why he distanced himself from the world, not as an act of rejection, but as a strategy. Because only from a distance can you see reality with clarity. Only in silence can you hear your own voice. And if you've made it this far, it's because deep down you already knew. You knew that something in modern social life doesn't make sense. You knew that many of the interactions you have are pure formality. You knew that true growth doesn't happen in the noise, but in introspection. Now the question is, will you have the courage to accept it? Because once you do, there's no turning back. It becomes unbearable. Trivial conversations seem absurd. The need to fit in disappears, and all that's left is the truth. The truth that solitude isn't a punishment. It's a privilege. A privilege reserved only for those strong enough to endure it. You can no longer deceive yourself. You can't force yourself to enjoy what once seemed normal. You can't pretend that empty conversations fulfill you or that external validation means anything. And that's the point of no return. It's terrifying, isn't it? Because most people spend their lives trying to fit in, making silent sacrifices to be accepted, shutting down parts of their essence to avoid bothering others. But you can't do that anymore. Because now you understand something that most will never understand. Life isn't about fitting in. It's about finding what truly resonates with you, and having the courage to follow that path, even if it means walking alone. And here's the most brutal paradox of all. The more you dare to be yourself, the more magnetism you generate, because people are desperate for authenticity, but very few have the courage to be authentic. And those who do, those who move without fear, those who don't need anyone's approval, those are the ones who end up being followed, but not because they seek it, because true freedom is so rare, so unique, that it's impossible to ignore. And now I ask you, what will you do with this information? You can't ignore it. You can pretend you never saw this. Go back to your normal life. Keep participating in the farce. Keep adapting to the mold that was imposed on you. Or you can do something much harder. You can accept the discomfort of the truth. You can embrace the idea that you'll never be understood by the majority. You can stop betraying yourself just to fit in. You can start living for you, not for others. Because in the end, there are two types of people in this world: those who adapt and those who find themselves. The majority chooses the first option because it's easier, more comfortable, safer. But the few who choose the second are the ones who truly leave a mark. So tell me, what kind of person are you? If you've made it this far, I want you to leave a comment with the phrase, "Silence is power," because those who understand this are the ones ready to play the game of life by their own rules. And if this made you think, if at any point you felt I was describing something you've always felt but never expressed, then subscribe to Psyche Nomad, because this is just the beginning. See you in the next video.